Namaste, it's time for another bicycle live stream on the first day of August in the Southern Hemisphere. Saturday the 1st of August, 7:50 a.m, 15 degrees. I've ridden 32 kilometres this morning. I'm going to follow on from a meme that I posted during the week, which said, any argument against veganism is an argument for suffering and for cruelty. I want to talk about, in relation to that, what I call the elephant in the room. The reason why somebody, when presented with all the facts, with all the awareness of the cruelty that's involved, the suffering that's involved in any form of animal exploitation, animal use, I want to talk about why when somebody is presented with all that, some people still, well actually have to say probably the majority of people presented with that, still don't actually take the next step, make the next move forward with that information. So why, if you became aware of the suffering, the cruelty, the horrendous evil holocaust responsible for the slaughter of 70 billion land animals a year, and so many sea animals that they can't even count it in numbers, they count it in weight, like it's trillions of sea animals. If you were aware, you became aware of that, why wouldn't you instantly, on the spot, go vegan? Well, let's have a look at 3 reasons. And the third one is the one that I want to focus on. So let's start off with 2 reasons that I've spoken about before. The first one is taste addiction. And it really is actually an addiction. It's so strong for most people that we don't want to admit that we cannot control it. And so therefore we come up with other excuses and justifications for why we continue supporting cruelty. So we try to downplay the cruelty. We try to say it's not important, or, our religion said it was all right, or where do you get your protein, or everybody's doing it, or it just goes on and on and on. Any excuse to get around the fact that the majority of people, majority of us, are addicted to, we have a taste addiction. And that's not a problem if that taste addiction is a vegan one, and we love well-cooked tofu and vegan pizza and things like that. But when it involves suffering, then it is an issue. So that's the first thing that normally comes up, and I've talked about addiction at length in the past. Second thing that comes up is habits, conditioning. Let's go back to the fact that we start our journey in this body as vegan. We start with the compassion that's in our heart. As babies, we have compassion and curiosity. And these, sadly, are conditioned out of us by well-meaning but incredibly lost adults around us that have believed a lie and think they're doing the right thing. They themselves are conditioned, so they pass on advice that is along those conditioned lines, like, this is why we get questions like, where do you get your protein? You need to drink milk to get calcium, this sort of thing. We're so conditioned that we don't question it. And it's when facts are brought up that go against what we've been conditioned from the earliest age to believe, it's too much to address. It's too mentally overwhelming. It's too disbelieving. We're like, no, that can't be so. Surely not all the important people, all the ones that love me and that I've loved in my life, surely they couldn't all be lying. No, that can't be true. So again, we downplay the suffering. We diminish it in our minds. We use that cognitive dissonance and say, oh, well, no, it's all right. You know, they don't suffer much. The animals die. They live humanely and they die, I don't know, they die quickly or something without knowing what's happening to them or something like that. I hope it's not too windy. Should be okay with this lapel mic, but anyway, we'll carry on. I'm riding into the wind. So that's the second thing, is this conditioning. When you've been conditioned and you're presented with this new message decade after, you've been conditioned for decade after decade after decade, your entire life, and suddenly your belief system that has been conditioned into you is brought into question. A lot of people cannot comprehend and handle that. And so it's like pulling the rug out from underneath you. And we're suddenly stuck in a situation where we have to admit that not only have we believed a lie, that we've been living a lie. And it's too much for a lot of people to contemplate making that change. So that's the second reason. But the elephant in the room, the one that I want to talk about, and this came up, I was thinking about it during the week, and ironically, probably maybe a day after I was thinking about it, I actually read an article which perfectly described exactly what I'm going to just talk about here. It's the elephant in the room. I'm calling it that is because it's the thing that we're afraid to admit. That we're afraid to admit that we mightn't be accepted. We have this deepest need to be accepted, to be liked by our friends, our family, our partner, our workmates. And, you know, we call it peer pressure when we're younger. I guess you call it peer pressure at school. We follow fashions, we follow crazes. We do things that go against our better judgment, our principles, just because our need to be accepted is so overwhelming that we cannot contemplate not being accepted. This is the elephant in the room when it comes to supporting suffering. And the article that I read will explain this a bit better. Is a lady saying that she'd been going vegetarian, not vegan at that point, but vegetarian. And each time she went to somebody's house to have a meal, she was afraid to tell them that she had gone vegetarian for fear of what they would think of her, i.e., she would not be accepted. Now, this comes down to our need for love being our deepest need, and acceptance is another way of just describing that she felt that she wouldn't be loved. So, sadly, what we do in this situation is we compromise our principles to feel accepted. We say, look, we know within what's the right thing to do, but we are so in need of feeling like we're being loved that we will do crazy things so that the people around us will like us. And that in itself is a very, very sad behavioural pattern, because we're seeking approval from people that are so lost and so fickle in their own ability to like us or give us approval, that at the drop of a hat, they will decide that they don't like us. And so it's a very sad situation when we use that as an excuse to continue supporting suffering. We've seen the documentaries telling us or showing us what's happening with the animals. We've seen the documentaries showing us what eating animal products is doing to our health, to the planet. We've seen all that. We know in our deepest core level, that of compassion, that we still carry from the moment we were conceived. We know that what is the right and the wrong thing to do. Oh, there's some baby ducklings there, oh my God. As opposed to non-baby ducklings. Anyway, so we know at a core level what's the right thing and the wrong thing to do. We have an inbuilt sense of ethics and morality, but we have an overriding, overwhelming need for love, to be liked, to be accepted, to be approved, even by those that mean very little to us. And we compromise our principles so that we can get that approval, and then we also then are no longer authentic with ourselves. We have then moved into a phase of not being at peace with ourselves, which is also a very sad situation to be in. Let me just focus on this intersection, which is looking pretty good. Yep. So relating that, you know, when I read that article about this lady, even though she didn't talk about needing to get approval, she described it in other words. She said she didn't want to tell people at the dinner parties that she was vegetarian because it would, some of the excuses or justifications she used to herself were like, oh, it would inconvenience them, or, you know, things like that. Well, that's not addressing the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is she's afraid she would not be liked. Now, when you address the elephant in the room, when you realise that that's a motivation behind your behavioural patterns, you have a greater chance of actually addressing it and say, look, I'm aware that I'm compromising my compassionate nature in order to win other people's approval. And it's not a very sensible thing to do, because these people themselves are doing the same thing, compromising their ethics and morality in order to win other people's approval. And it's very, as I said earlier, it's very fickle. It's given and it's taken away as in a flash. So what we need to do is to look at where unconditional approval comes from, which of course happens on a spiritual level, and realize, as I've said many times before, there is nothing that we can do or say that makes us unlovable, for we are children of the universe and we are always accepted, no matter what our behavior. Even non-vegans are accepted. But when we realize this, what we can do is we can walk away from the need for others' approval. This releases us. We release ourselves from the ties that bind by walking away from the mindset that we need other people's approval in order to be happy, to feel loved. And to give you an example, you know, because I went most of my life, almost all of my life, pretty much, the things that I've done have not been, the way I've lived my life has not been mainstream. It has not been something that I've done to win people's approval, that's for sure. It has been quite the opposite. I've been ridiculed, judged, laughed at, frowned upon by workmates, supposed friends, family members, you know, because I have chosen to live my life in alignment with my ethics, my inner compassion, and I don't need someone else's approval to know that I am completely loved and accepted by the universe. As Denise says, accepting the unconditional love of the divine, exactly. So, going vegan at the age of 16, never having taken any drugs or smoked or done anything along those lines, only ever having had alcohol 3 times when I was 17, and being quite sick after it. All those sort of things, being into meditation from an early age, preferring to have my own company rather than being out partying. These sort of things for me were like, it is not worth compromising my principles, the things that I know that are right, the ethics and morality that I live by. It is not worth it simply to have acceptance by somebody else who is lost. And that's the reality of it. Why would I want somebody to say, hey, you're all right, mate, when that person is so lost that they're not following their own ethics and morality? They're compromising their principles. What value to me is their approval? It's pretty much meaningless. And that's the value of it. It holds no value. So if that's the approval that we're chasing something that holds no value. So I want you to dwell upon that. That is the elephant in the room when it comes to people who still keep supporting animal suffering. We don't want to admit that at our deepest core level, we're absolutely shit scared of not having people's approval. Whether it's our mum, our dad, our brother, our sister, our friends, our family, our neighbours, our workmates, whoever it is, we are so shit scared that the sad reality is that we will do things that go against everything we know. Hey guys, oh, that's the geese. The geese along Crummer Creek Road. We will do something that goes against everything we know that is right, simply to get someone's approval, simply to fit in. It's a very sad way to live our life, and I only hope that you find the strength that allows you to stand firm on your principles and not compromise on them. So I hope you've gotten something out of this live stream. Remember to live vegan and save lives, and let's seek the approval of following the highest values within us that we all have and living accordingly. Ahimsa.